Today we're going to be looking at a problem that involves proportional reasoning. We're going to be solving this problem using equivalent ratios. Today's question is a real-life application. The question says that a standard punch requires 2 cans of orange juice and 1 bottle of ginger ale. When using 4 bottles of ginger ale, how many cans of orange juice are needed for the punch? Well, just by reading the question, how do you know that this is going to be a question that involves ratios? Well, let's think about the two things that are being compared. We're looking at orange juice and ginger ale. These are the two quantities that are being compared to one another. So let's write down our ratio. These are the two quantities that are being compared. Well, let's think about what is the ratio of orange juice to ginger ale. Let's go back to the question. The question says that for every 2 cans of orange juice, we need to have 1 bottle of ginger ale. So where am I going to write the number 2? Good, we're going to write it here because 2 represents the number of cans of orange juice. For every 2 cans, we need how many bottles of ginger ale? Good, 1. So we have a ratio of 2 to 1. So now what? Well, what is the question asking us? Let's go back and read it again. It says, when using 4 bottles of ginger ale, well, let's underline that information, 4 bottles of ginger ale, how many cans of orange juice are needed for the punch? So what do we need to figure out? Right, we need to figure out how many cans of orange juice do we need to make this punch at the same ratio of 2 to 1. Well, this is a part-to-part ratio. For every 2 parts orange juice, I need 1 part ginger ale. So if we're using 4 bottles of ginger ale, where can I write that number in my ratio? Would I put the number 4 here? No. How come? Right, because the left side of our ratio represents orange juice. It does not represent ginger ale. So let's cross that out. Where would I put the number 4? We would put the number 4 on the right side of the ratio, since the right side represents the parts of ginger ale that we need. What goes on the left side? Well, that's what we don't know. We don't know how many cans of orange juice we need if we have 4 bottles of ginger ale. So this is the information we need to find. So today we're going to look at one method of solving this using these ratios, although there are many different ways you can solve this problem. So we know that we have a ratio of orange juice to ginger ale, and for this specific punch we have a ratio of 2 to 1. And we need to find out how many cans of orange juice we're going to need if we have 4 bottles of ginger ale. So how are we going to solve this? Well, can you think of another way that you can write a ratio? A ratio can also be written as a fraction. We're looking at orange juice to ginger ale. My ratio is 2 to 1. And because this relationship is proportional, the two ratios are going to be equal to one another. So let's write down the number 4, and we're going to figure out a way that we can solve for the number of cans of orange juice we need. So looking at this relationship, we're solving for the unknown value in the numerator of the second fraction. Because it's unknown, let's give it a variable. Let's just call it x. I'm going to show you 2 ways to determine the value of x. The first way is to look for a multiplication relationship between the ratios. Well, what does that mean? How do you know that there is a multiplication relationship between these ratios? Looking at the 2 ratios, how do you know they're related by multiplication? Well, if you look at the denominator in the first fraction, the number is 1. And in the second fraction, the number is 4. How do you know that this is related by multiplication? Right, because the number is increasing. Think, what can you multiply 1 by to get 4? Right, 1 times 4 is 4. Now, because these 2 ratios are equal, if you change the denominator by 4, by multiplying it by 4, what do you have to do to the numerator? Right, we must multiply the numerator by 4 as well. Whatever you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So 2 times 4 is 8, therefore x must be equal to 8. Does this statement look equal now? Do you think that 2 over 1 is equal to 8 over 4? Well, how can you prove that? Well, let's look at the first fraction, 2 over 1, or 2 divided by 1. What's 2 divided by 1? 2. Let's look at the second fraction, 8 over 4, or 8 divided by 4. What's 8 divided by 4? It also gives us 2. Therefore, these two ratios are in fact equal. Now I'm going to show you the second way to determine the value of x. We're going to be looking at a multiplication relationship within these ratios. So again, we had a ratio of 2 to 1 and a ratio of something to 4. So let's look at the first ratio that's complete. Can you find a multiplication relationship between these two values? Well, we know when we multiply, the numbers get larger. So let's look at the smaller number, the number 1. What do I need to multiply 1 by to get to the number 2? 1 times what gives us 2? Right, 1 times 2 is 2. Let's look at the second ratio now. We know that these two ratios are equivalent and they represent a proportional relationship. So if I'm multiplying the number 1 times 2, which number in the second ratio am I going to multiply by 2? Right, we're going to multiply the number 4 times 2 in order to keep these two statements equivalent. So what's 4 times 2? 4 times 2 equals 8, therefore x must be equal to 8. Did we get the same answer as the other method? Yes, both answers gave us a value of 8. But what did that mean for this question? Well, let's put all our information together. For 2 cans of orange juice, we need 1 bottle of ginger ale. So for 4 bottles of ginger ale, we need 8 cans of orange juice. Did we answer the question? The question said, how many cans of orange juice are needed for the punch? Therefore, 8 cans of orange juice are needed for the punch. Now remember, this was just one way of solving this problem. Can you think of other ways you could have solved the same problem? Check out the playlist to see other methods of answering this question.